So this is the next video in a series, and here we're going to pick up where we left off with the LED test, and we're going to add an additional element. In this case, it's going to be a motion sensor. So just in terms of hardware, we'll look back at that. Again, we have our LED here. We're going to put that back into pin 13. The shorter of the two pins is the low or ground pin. We're going to plug that back into our Arduino. We're going to introduce this new piece of this new component, and here we have a PIR motion sensor. The pinout is on the back here. We have ground, voltage, and out. And so we're going to use our Arduino to power this. We have the yellow attached to the voltage. So we're going to stick that into the 5V, which is 5 volts out, and that's going to be providing power to this. And we're also going to attach the ground to the ground pin. And why don't we plug the signal or the out from the motion sensor to pin 7. So we're now going to set that aside and go over to our programming. Let's have a look at our sketch, and I've already uploaded the program that we had just established in the last video, and we're going to build off that. But before we do, let's go back up to File. We're going to drop down to Save As, and we're going to rename it because we're creating a new program. We're going to change this to LED and sensor test because we're going to add a sensor. We're introducing a new component to the Arduino board, and so we need to define that. So we're going to write down the data type. We're going to give it a name. We're going to call it sensor pin. You can call it whatever you'd like. And we have it connected to pin 7. And so we're going to define that. Then we're going to go back down to the next step. Now we're going to set it up so that we can use it. We're going to write down the pin mode. In this case, this new pin is an input because we're going to collect information through it. Now we can go down to our loop, and we're going to introduce a third piece of information, and that is again the data type. We're going to call this sensor value equals digital read sensor pin. What's going on here is we're defining the type of data, and then we're giving that a name. This is, in a sense, a placemaker that holds the value of what's read on the pin. And we have the equal sign here. This here is what we're reading. And so we're going to digital read what comes in through that input, the sensor, which is the name that we've given to that pin. With that information, we're going to ask the program a question. And the question is if. We're going to say if the sensor value is equal to high, then do this. Again, to back up here, the question we're asking is if. Does this happen? And we're checking the value that we've just established. It's a placemaker. It's a name that's going to hold the information that comes from this pin. And we're asking it, has it turned on high? One thing I wanted to point out is that there's a double equal sign, and here we have just one. And I think it's important to take a moment to point this out. When there's just one, it's actually saying that it is equal to what comes next. Just as we have the LED pin equals 13, we're giving it a name, and we're saying this is actually equal to what is happening on pin 13. Here we're saying that the sensor value is equal to what's happening when we read the sensor pin. What's different with the double equal sign is that this is actually a comparison. It's asking a question. Is this the same as that? And we start with this curly bracket, which is where we're going to give a command. And so what we're going to command it is to turn on the LED light. We're actually just going to take from the old program, we're going to cut that out and we're going to paste it. And so now we're telling it to turn on the LED if the motion sensor is triggered high. So let's put a delay on that so it's on for a little bit. Why don't we put it on for half a second? And then we're going to turn it off again. So we're going to say digital right LED pin low, or same as saying off. And we can erase this information here. Sometimes people will do this, so they'll put a double hashtag, which is a way of adding a line of comment. And you can say end of if statement. You don't have to do this. It can be helpful when your programs get quite complicated and there's a lot of things going on. It can also be helpful to comment your programs so that if you haven't looked at it for a very long time, you can review it and understand what you were thinking when you actually wrote it. It's almost like taking notes on cooking a recipe. We've now uploaded this program. If we enter our hand into things, the motion sensor will pick that up. And when we remain still, it'll turn off again. So that's an introduction into how to incorporate a sensor into your Arduino. In the next video, we're going to look at a slightly more complicated version of a sensor.